I'm thinking about films because I wanted to hold the river and the city together. And the first way to think about doing that when Bengal is involved is to think about, well, the relationship between the country and the city. For Marx is a big thing, but also, look, I'm guessing that most of you have already seen these films, and me saying from outside anything new about Ritok Katak is probably impossible. But what I had in mind, I kind of made a mistake. I had in mind Sita from Subarnarekha, and I wanted to contrast that with Munak Biswas's film, Satanya Sambat, the construction of the city. So the importance of the river and the construction of the city. But actually, my mistake was that I was thinking more about Megha Dakatara and Shankar singing those Tagore songs as he walked alongside the river, right? That was the image that was in my head and how important this was for the city. And then I wanted to contrast how people come into the city and bring culture with them to what had happened in the American War here in Vietnam, in the Delta. And there's a beautiful film called Can Dong Hang, which is translates as The Abandoned Field, made in 1979, and is all shot in one field, which is a flooded field in the plain of reeds in the Mekong Delta, and by director Win Hong Sen, and includes some fantastic scenes of the fight against the Americans in the war, but it really evokes the idea of the Delta. And the Delta was kind of, abandoned field refers somehow to the way in which the American war cleaned out the rural side, drew everyone into the city as refugees. Right, so you can see what I'm thinking about. Ritok Katak's film, which is all about partition and drawing people into the city, basically Calcutta, I'm thinking of here, and what happened with the abandoned field. But I'm including the abandoned field because next month, April the 30th, is the 50th anniversary of the end of that American war. It's called the American War, but you know it from Hollywood cinema as the Vietnam War. And of course, it's 71 years since the defeat of the French and the French Vietnamese War. And of course, it's 70 odd years since partition, 50 years since the Bangladesh War, right? So these kind of flows of refugees is what I was thinking of in these films. But also technology. What you can see here, please note the train in the background. This is a kind of Ritok Katak tribute, I guess, to Satyajit Ray. Isn't it a little bit of Apu in there? And I want to think about the technology that brings people to the city. One, the case of trains. The other one, the war machine, if you like, right? Dragging people into strategic hamlets. I'm not saying these are the same, but this is what I wanted to start thinking about. Not just the songs, but partly the songs and partly the sound, which I can't really show. I have risked showing bits of film on Zoom presentations before, but they clog up and stop. But you can imagine this sound. They've been rehearsing for the 50th anniversary of the end of the war this last week with helicopters flying over the city, and you hear this helicopter sound, right? So you've got to imagine that. And when we watch films, we have to listen as well, is what I'm saying, and think about mood and atmosphere. The picture I have from Ritok Katak here is the end of the train line, which hits the river, right, where the train line meets the river on the West Bengal side. And this very emotive moment with, anyway, I'm not going to say, there's a lot that could be said about these films, but I'm not going to talk about cinema so much today as to think about what this means. This is Komoganda, right? 1961. I'm not going to talk about films as such or cinema studies as such, but what they say about, what they might be able to say about migration, okay? And the need to rebuild lives to another part of it, of course, I'm don't want to just destroy any films by giving spoilers, but you can see the beautiful revolutionary with a gun. Vietnam has a kind of monopoly on that image. She shot down the helicopter, and I wanted to just make a little joke, I suppose, in Srebrenica at the end when Binu and Ishua is going to rebuild their lives. At the end, we see this image of the rice paddy, and somehow I feel like in Candong Huang there's a celebration of that, but also echoed was the smoke coming from the helicopter that she's just shot down. This is the mum. She has to go and rebuild her life. The Americans have killed. She has to rebuild everything. They've killed her husband and so on. She then heads to the city, right? Well, I assume the city. Now I'm thinking of, here's your Minister for Education, Mad Mr. Paul and his rebuilding of the city. And in contemporary films, in a film here called Kandong Batan from a novel by Win Ngoc Tu. She's a Delta-based novelist whose work is really great. Endless Field, it's called in English. I sent the links. I'm sure people didn't have enough time to see it, but I want to contrast this scene where, if you're listening to the film, it's a beautiful rural scene, but what you see over the top is the announcement from the government in Hanoi announcing the duck cull because of bird flu, right? So this pestilence of bird flu transforms destroys rural ways of living, and of course, Prati Basu. I don't want to say anything particular about this much beloved man from the government. JU students will certainly have. Let's not talk about that so much, but you know what's been in the news this month with him. Talking about the Delta, I want to talk about a bunch of books. I'm just putting these up just for indication. Debjani Bhattacharya's book on empire and ecology, Anu Jalay's Forest of Tigers, and Amitesh Mukhopadhyay's Living Disasters is really important for the Bengal side. Quagmire by David Briggs and The Country and the City by Raymond Williams has been important for thinking about the Vietnam side. And I'm working through this with partly the novels of Son Nam, which is this Buffalo Boy, and Win Ngoc Tu, made the film about the duck farm, basically, life on the river. Floating Field is another translation of the title. Thinking about it in terms of John Bellamy Foster's work on ecology and metabolic rift. I hope to say a lot more about metabolic transformation. That's a relationship and the balance between nature and humans and how we get that wrong, basically, and the debt that we have to this balance. And these are the posters of the film. I've just put them up to orient where we are, right? So you have this as a record on the tape. The three with Rumour of Calcutta film. I'm not saying they're equivalent films or they're related, but in some ways they are doing this because, there would be too much to say to show how these images work as tributes. But I hope to take out this idea of rebuilding life and rebuilding the city, making the city and unmaking the city that's involved. That for me spins out, comes from thinking about these books and films. Now I want to narrow the issues a little bit. So talk about animals and talk about technology and urbanization. You can see I have the cliched animals here. There aren't any tigers left in the Mekong Delta because humans have industrialized the Delta, and there aren't so many humans allowed to stay in the Sundarbans because this is the story of Anu Jalay. She talks about the relationship between humans and tigers, but it's the World Wildlife Fund that came with its original pro-tiger, and also the Left Front government talking about this. So animals and tourism, I guess, because Well, let me think about these images from films and just images in general, right? We see this tiger by the river on the one side, and we see humans living on or beside the river in their other photograph. I guess there's a lot I want to say about all this as well, but let's just look at this. All right, let's look at what we can see in the photograph. We have a logo of the tiger one, the logo of the tiger, the name of the Sundarbans, an itinerary for the tour, a picture of a tiger, a bit damp, and some the edge of the delta water there, and some bonus tracks, if you like, a tiger attack survivor video. That's almost like a cliche, right, of tiger lore, and local dance video, the other exoticism. And if you look at what I'm trying to get at with this coupling of these photographs together, the photograph of what can you see? Ask yourself what you can see in the photograph on the Vietnam side. We see a kind of house on stilts by the river, bit makeshift in many ways. That's because it has to cope with rising and lowering water. We see a woman on a boat. She's wearing a non-la, a traditional, so it's a bit exotic. This is not exactly a tourist photo, but it is a little bit. And we see on her boat this engine. David Briggs and I got very interested in these engines, right? So let me talk about them a little bit. It's the Mai Kole, right? That's what it's called. And Mai means engine. Kole is a name from well, it's where they come from. They're manufactured in Collier, Wisconsin, and they, after the war, flooded the delta. Flooded them. No, that's use of a metaphor that's probably Biggs uses that metaphor. These engines were all over the place. They were used for irrigation. They were used for boats, as you saw, and they are hundreds of thousands of them appeared in the delta. They're a piece of technology. They could be mounted on, and it could do many things. Right? So it was used to irrigate small-scale rice paddy. Okay. So I wanted to hold on to this idea of technology flooding the delta. Of course, other technologies come to the delta, but this Kole is from the Kohler Company in Wisconsin, really important. Put in the middle a little joke. They also made the electronic sink. Now, I'm thinking about metabolic rift and electronic sink. Electric and sink doesn't, for me, go together very well. You know what? Electricity and water that's a bad mix. But anyway, a little bit of a joke. But here you see the engine, and I became a bit obsessed with these engines. Because there's so many, you can go to like stores in Kamau, which have got hundreds of them still, and they are ubiquitous in the way that other kinds of technology are also ubiquitous in the and so on. But I mean, Mai Kole is being recycled and repaired as well. But there are also whole industries of repair that have also flooded the delta. But that's another story I'm not going to get into so much. And I wanted to think also in terms of big technology, the technology of hydro dams. It's not the same level at all, but it really affects the delta and therefore affects the city. You see on the map here the Mekong, which starts in the Himalaya, as does the Ganga, right? But on the other side of the Himalaya, so we're sharing some sort of mythic origins, but there are lots of dams on the Ganga as well, but not as big as the ones that China has produced, the hydro dams, which fuel the Chinese economy at present. And there are more planned, and some in Laos and some in Cambodia, that are really changing the ecology of the delta, really changing the way in which the delta and so the city is lived. Right? So a bit of a God's eye view. This is the contrast with what's happening in the delta now. So because the water rate flow of the river is changing, the economy is changing from rice economy, which you see bit of a God's eye view, a Google Map type thing. On the one side, there's rice paddies, all neat and many of them, changing to industrialized prawn production, which is covered in factories and in, I mean, some of it's outdoors, of course, in rice fields, but a lot of it is processed manufacture plant factories, basically, and industrialized. And I wanted to talk about that because, again, the green paddy field and the tourist-like photo contrasts with industrialization in a way that makes me think, or allows us to think about the ways in which technology and culture crash into each other in this so-called metabolic rift. Not to say that the rice economy has not also changed the environment, but the prawn economy is a different level of industrialization. And it's very interesting because of that economy, people are migrating into the city, and it's changing the city. So it's city-based companies are industrializing the delta, and that's forcing, in a way, well, the dams, partly because of the changed flow of the river, the changed flood pattern of the delta, the lack of silt that comes down, right? The lessening of silt that comes down means salinization is coming up the river further, and more land is not available for rice because rice won't grow in salt water. But brackish water economy, which means prawns basically, is thriving. And we see that on some, we'll see that in some maps in a second. First, I should say that this is not just people from the city of Ho Chi Minh City that are developing this new industrialization, but also Australian companies are moving in. This is probably VQ, but still, with new technologies and educated generations and so on, and very all about clean prawn and so on. But they use partly the Kalra engine to clean the water, to keep the water circulating for the prawn hatcheries. But the startup costs for prawn are quite big. And the thing is, only this kind of Australian company or a large Ho Chi Minh City-based company can really afford the startup costs. A rice farming concern, like a family rice farm, a small paddy plot and so on, has been successful for people for a couple of generations, right? Not for everyone, but those who own paddy. But the startup costs for moving into prawn are so much that quite often people prefer to sell up and move to the city, and which is interesting because it has two different layers of class fractions, if you like, that migrate. The wealthy who sold their farms and moved to the city to be with their children who are in higher education, and their former workers, which are then displaced, no longer live on the land. Think of Marx's concept of the enclosures and so on. Then they move to either to the city, regional cities, or to urban kind of dormitory type living, and they work in these large factories, but not as many, of course. Not everyone gets jobs, so a lot also migrate into the city as the urban poor. So the engine is there, but also this other big technology is there as well. Two levels of technology we have to distinguish. Of course, it's a big export industry, prawn. This photograph I've stolen from a TV show from May, one of my students who kindly showed me the show. I love this image of a guy working on his computer wearing a hard hat. One should always wear a hard hat when one uses a computer. It's very dangerous work. But of course, it's also big ports. There is reason to wear a hard hat as well in the ports, which are heavy industrial shifting and loading in great containers to send prawn to Australia. And there they are, right? So there's prawns. Look at the statistics of migration in the last few years. And we see that basically for Ho Chi Minh City, I've shown the graph, but I won't drill deep into the graphs right now, but I have done to explain this. The last 2 or 3 years, I've got some really close statistics here. The last 2 or 3 years, Ho Chi Minh City's increased its population by about 250,000 persons. So in a city of 9 million, that's another million every 4 years at the rate we're going. It's massively increased since 2019. I have a statistic for 2022 as well now, and it's continued to increase. And more than half of that increase has come from the Delta. Some's come from the north, from the cyclone-affected areas. This will, of course, resonate with anyone who knows much about the Sundarbans. But yeah, movement into the city in Ho Chi Minh or in Vietnam is largely coming from the Mekong Delta to the figure of like 1,000 a year. And that's shown here in these statistics. And it's largely because of prawn, but the prawn is largely because of the dams, which has changed the nature of the river, which has upset the ecological, the so-called metabolic rift, the exchange of humans and nature, which was not as dramatic with rice as it is with prawn. Okay. So you can see some maps of the Delta where I demonstrate. This is 2009, 2015, 2021. And I guess quickly, if you just look at the pink area on the first one, you see that's saltwater or prawn farming. It becomes light blue in the second one, and there's a bit further into the Bac Lieu area. And then in the third one, it's called salt in this one, but it means salt brackish water economy, which is mostly prawns, but other kinds of small fish too, which are farmed. But it's taken over much more of the area. And actually, if you drill deep into this, you'll see also that fruit farms have reduced considerably because, yeah, they're not very suitable for brackish water where salination has happened. And also the nature of the floodplain has changed the rice production because the river should flood it has a cycle of flooding which distributes silt over the delta, and because the water flow is governed by Chinese dams, basically, it's changed, and the silt is not distributed in the delta anymore in the same way. It is to a degree, there's still flooding. Okay, we can see this in Bengal as well. Also, because of time, I will not say too much about this, also because you all know it much better than me, probably. But I was very interested to look at these two statistical maps, one from 2001, one from 2011, which is not recent, but this process is very interesting because you see the migration from Bangladesh into India, and that's all they're talking about here. So not from the Delta into Calcutta, but from Bangladesh into India was, first of all, largely rural, but increasingly, especially in the north, became urban migration. That's I'd like to drill a lot deeper into this sort of thing. I know graphs don't tell you everything, and in fact, statistical work like this, you basically make up the answers you want, and then you ask the questions to get the answers and so on. But it's still also very striking when it shows something like this that we have to investigate. So, you know, this scene of Paul and Paul, Mr. Paul's intervention as a builder, removing the slums and building new condos is very crucial to this. And, you know, Calcutta certainly is like like Ho Chi Minh as well. I look out the window and I can see, every time I look out the window, I see a new condo has gone up, it seems, right? And the city is growing and growing, and going further and further south, right? As is Calcutta, the Royal Ganges is, I mean, this is a bit exoticist too. It's a great photo of the beautiful condos that we can all aspire to, and they're sold in these. The Telegraph and the Statesman have these wraparound advertisement pages. I should have taken a photo of one of those, and so. But so also here. I mean, these ones are interesting. There's a advertising photo, and then the actual photo, which shows that the building of this planned utopia is not really happening. But in the advertising photo, the one on the left, you see they've erased the city pretty much. I mean, they've put it further away to pretend that you're down in the beautiful south and so on. But what's happening is that this area, which is right where I'm living, is prone to flooding now because the flood of the Mekong of the Delta is kind of shifted into the city because building more and more condos on what was swampland has lowered the water table or changed the water table such that we now experience floods in the city. I recently built underpass on the road on the left-hand side, and the flood defenses, which are not yet complete, but almost complete, to protect the city. Basically, it's flooding to about 2 foot deep where I live every time there's a full moon. The moon changes the tide a little bit, enough to bring it up to not quite enough to enter into our underground car park, but certainly much of the city goes underwater for large parts of the time. Largely as a fact of building accommodation for the people that are migrating into the city. I mean, the well-to-do as well as the poor. So, you know, it's Mr. Paul, but there are Vietnamese versions, of course, and the supply that they've got, I want to show is something about the metabolic exchange between the rural or the river and the city. It's sand. You'll see just this week, 44 people have been put on trial for illegal sand mining, which is dredging the rivers, basically, dredging the Mekong Delta and bringing sand into the city to build these condominiums that so many people are living in. And this is a huge, huge industry. The photo on the right, you'll see, is a bit curious because of the eyes on the barges, right? They are barges coming down from Cambodia. They're Khmer barges. So tags the theme of culture coming into the city, I suppose, in some kind of twisted way. But this is basically sand silt of the river. What's there, what is being reduced by the upstream dams, is what builds the city. What makes the city, but it's unmaking the city as well because it's destroying the rural and the relationship between rural and countryside. This is what metabolic rift is all about. I'm a bit critical of John Bellamy Foster and others like Kohei Saito and so on. There's quite a number of books that have been produced by this monthly review clique of Marxists. Love them as I do, and yet we have to be critical of any forms of intellectual bandwagonism. They've picked up on a small part of Marx's work where he was reading in the 1850s the work of Liebig, German soil scientist, and so the relationship between waste and economy, humans, the city and the rural, and wanted to talk about ecology. And then on the back of this, Bellamy Foster's made a critique of those who said Marx never discussed ecology. He said, yes, he did. He was the first to discuss ecological issues and environmental issues among Marxisms. And the robbery of nature is the theme that comes from Liebig, but there's a whole other dimension of it that plugs into Marx's early interest in Epicurus and Democritus and other thinkers of the good life. His last big book was Socialism and Ecology, interesting slip, The Return of Nature. the big sensation, though, is this super successful book "Slow Down" by Kohei Saito, a Japanese scholar from the Todai, from the University of Tokyo, philosophy department, which Zizek and Badiou, they've said ecology is the new opium for the masses. Well, it's certainly been super successful. His argument is something, he's really good on Marxist notebooks and so on, but he also thinks, Marx left his work incomplete. Everyone says that, of course. And my view is that was the point. We have these tools. It's incomplete because we have to do the work for our context. Nomine mutato. He basically says this is the story of capitalism in England in the 18th century, but it's a warning for those in Germany and for elsewhere. And we have to read it again. But Kohei Saito is very good on the need to return to balance again the metabolic equation, the metabolic rift, the relationship of humans to nature, and this will have implications for how we think of the city, right, and how we think of trade and so on. He wants to slow down, and that metaphor is maybe where there could be a critique, because it's a kind of liberal green metaphor, but there are critiques of Bellamy Foster as well. So to not be Mr. Pole, to not be the super developer, but also to think about how the culture of the rural enters into the city or is in a relationship with the city seems to be the work that needs to be thought through. And it's the green spaces in the city that I think that make me think about this. The one on the right is the view from my bedroom window of one of the last mangrove forests within the center-ish of the city, right? And pretty close to the center of the city here. And it's there's a fish farm in the front that seems to be expanding. They've just added an extra pond. And there are plans for this 27 hectares of mangrove forest, right? It's in District 7. District 7 is very built up in other parts, so you can't tell from the brochure on the left, but they want to make a super city in that 17 hectares. You see on the right-hand side. Part of it is going to be a super marina for the billionaire yachts of they actually said in the brochure, I should have had evidence of this, that it would be the yachts of people like Elon Musk, the new president, the cyber president or whatever he is, the new techno-fascist king of the world, and his little orange partner in crime, coming to with his yacht. And, I'm a bit dismayed by this, partly because I left my yacht in Sydney, right, and didn't bring it with me to Vietnam, as if I'd have a yacht. Couldn't afford it, but it's going to raise prices, and there's not that much thought to the fact that we need these mangrove, these green spaces in the city. They can erase the rest of the city as they've done. I mean, you see the brown area behind the modeling, sort of reduced District 7 to low rise, which it's not at all. It's massively full of those high-rise apartments. So where are we at? I got these things to juggle, if you like. The hydro dams, and the effect of those on the river and the delta, on the whole ecology, because of siltation, because of erosion, because of the disruption of the flooding cycle, because of the change then in the economy from rice to brackish water, which is much more industrialized and not family businesses, but has to be done by DFI, direct foreign investment. And then the kind of DFI theory as well is coming in to think about this. We've got migration issues of the dual levels of migration, those families that move into the city to build and buy condos to live in they also need sand, concrete to build them, to live in these massive houses. There's villas, basically, that are hugely enormous villas that are fashionable all through the south of Ho Chi Minh City. And of course, the influx of 1 million people every 4 years is massive for a city that is if a third of those people are wealthy enough to buy cars, our future is doomed, because most of the roads are 2 lanes and they're designed for motorcycles, which are basically a main-collet, a small engine like the irrigation engine on wheels, basically. The Honda Win and other small vehicles, which is a great aspect of I'm not saying everyone should go back to bicycles, but a great aspect of life in Ho Chi Minh City. Here's a more extreme version of what you see out of my window at sunrise and their planning documents. This one on the right is from another of their documents. Looks like Disneyland or some kind of weird fantasy utopia, but this is the one that mentions the yacht club for Elon Musk and so on. It's not going to happen. But this is the kind of contrast between fantasy of the city and the reality of people who live, and how we live and how we need to live, and the issue of what will be needed to both replenish the rural and to live in the city on this floodplain, basically, this swamp that is being turned into a paved, that's being paved with concrete, and silt from the river is being used to concrete over the lungs of the land, basically. So we need to think about and discuss lots of things here. Metabolic exchange between the river and the city, and how that is an exchange of migration, flows of labor and of culture, and co-constituted together. Delta and the history of technology, Delta and water, Delta and planning. This is a new kind of enclosure of the environment and a new monetization of water, basically. This is something from Debjani Bhattacharya that I got very much, that in law and in planning, there was monetization of the liquidity of the land that Calcutta was also built on. I guess the issue of heritage is a factor here. The children of the rich families that made money from rice aren't going to inherit their rice paddy plots, which would be kind of romantic and acceptable, because they are being sold off to prawn industry, and you don't really have the same kind of inheritance. If your family handed over a prawn farm, it's not quite the same as the family's ancestral land, a paddy plot with the ancestors actually situated on site, right? They are removed when the factories are put up. So yeah, this is why this is what I'm struggling wrangling with at present, trying to think of how I can think through this metabolic exchange literature, make a critique of it while using material from the lived experience, how we're living in the city and the rural, and how we need to balance that together. And I hope that's of interest to you all. And I hope if you want to look at any of the other images again and talk about them, I hope they will generate some questions and discussion. And yeah, thank you very much.